The LA Kings start strong and then collapse and lose a key player. We talk about all that and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the last 30 years, also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the last 18 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. The LA Kings played game 18 of this NHL season. They were in Colorado to take on the always tough Avalanche. The Kings were coming off a 3-1 road loss in Calgary against the Flames, looking to finish on their opportunities and play a little bit more of a consistent all-around game against Colorado. They were taking on an Avalanche team that was one of the best in the league on the power play and featured an elite top line and one of the best defensemen in the NHL. The lineup for the Kings going up against Colorado would be Anze Kopitar centering the top line with Adrian Kempe and Trevor Moore being added on that top line. Second line of Philip Deneau with Kevin Fiala and Akil Thomas. Third line of Quentin Byfield with Alex Laferriere and Warren Fogle. And the fourth line, Samuel Helenius, along with Andre Lee and Trevor Lewis. On defense, Mikey Anderson would be paired with Vladislav Gavrikov, Joel Edmondson with Brant Clark, and Caleb Jones into the lineup with Jordan Spence. The starting goalie would be Darcy Kuemper, with David Riddick serving as the backup. Well, my big question going into this game, would the Kings be able to contain the Avalanche talented top line, and could they win the special teams battle, and also could they stay out of the penalty box? As far as the game summary in this one, it started about as well as it could for the LA Kings. Sniper Adrian Kempe lighting the lamp just 32 seconds into the game, and the Kings grabbed a very quick 1-0 lead. However, the Colorado top line would respond shortly thereafter. Arturi Lehkonen, one of the top line wingers for the Avalanche, would score the equalizer. We were tied at 1. However, Adrian Kempe would score his second goal of the period, second of the game, and the Kings held a 2-1 lead after the opening period. In the second period, it was pretty much all Colorado. Mikko Rantanen would strike with the LA defense, allowing him to get behind him. Great stretch pass from Cale Makar, and he would tie the game at 2-2. The Kings did not record a shot on goal in the entire second period, and yet we were still tied at 2-2 going into the third. In the third, the Kings would again struggle to get any offense going, although they wouldn't be held without a shot, but they didn't have many, and they would also lose starting goalie Darcy Kuemper. About 5 minutes into the third period, David Riddick would have to come on in relief. Then he would be greeted by Mikko Rantanen scoring his second goal of the game to give the Avalanche their first lead at 3-2. And then Rantanen would cap off the night with an empty net goal for the hat trick. Final score, Kings 2, Avalanche 4. Checking the final stats from the game. Shots on goal, obviously favoring Colorado, 26-15. Again, the Kings did not get a single shot on goal in the second period. Power play was even. The Kings did kill off all 3 Colorado power play chances. The Kings were 0 for 1 with a man advantage. Faceoffs heavily favored the Kings, 39-19. So the Kings were able to, after stoppages of play, get the first crack at possession of the puck, and they still only generated 15 shots on goal throughout the game. Hits favored the Kings, 24-20. Block shots favored LA, 18-15. So my takeaway from this game, the Kings started great. The Avs then pushed back, and then the Kings had no answer. And that is concerning. Great start. Okay, the Avs then pushed back in the second. I get that. But then the Kings had no response in the third. They, getting no shots on goal in the second period is kind of crazy. Now, it does happen. If you watch the broadcast on TNT, they did point out that the Boston Bruins apparently had a period recently where they had no shots on goal. So it does happen. It's still crazy, though, to think that an NHL team could go an entire period without getting a single shot on goal. But okay, it does occasionally happen. But again, after the Kings don't get a shot on goal, there's still a full period to play, and it's tied 2-2. It's anyone's game at that point, and the Kings didn't have a real response in the third period. Now, if the Kings would have put up a fight in the third and they end up losing 3-2 against, an Avalanche team that features some real elite players, okay, I think we could accept that. But no response in the third was really disappointing. And it's not like this was the last game of a 5-game road trip or something like that. This was a bizarre game from the LA Kings standpoint to start so well and then just kind of fade away. I mean, look, I'm willing to give the Avalanche some credit, but I was really disappointed, obviously with the loss, but more that the Kings had a great first period. Okay, the home team, the Avalanche, pushed back on home ice in the second, but then no response in the third from the Kings. It was still the Avalanche taking it to LA. Again, that was really, really disappointing. Quote of the game, and this comes from Kings Insider in front of the show, Zach Dooley, kingsinsider.com. This was Warren Fogle, Kings forward, after the game, who said, quote, "We had a great start. Juice's line gets one on the first shift and puts us in a good position. And I thought for the remainder of the first period, we were playing aggressive and on our toes. In the second, we kind of got away from that. It felt like we were honestly respecting their top guys so much that we kind of got away from doing what we do best as well. We've got to be aware that when they're out there, but at the same time, we've got to do what we got to do to be successful. That's getting the pucks on net, checking hard, and playing more aggressive," end quote. That was after the game from Kings forward Warren Fogle. So what was not so good for LA from a team standpoint? We'll talk about individuals coming up. One of my keys to a Kings win was to contain the Avalanche top players. The top line of reigning league MVP Nathan MacKinnon with Mikko Rantanen and Artturi Lehkonen, and former Norris Trophy winning defenseman Cale Makar. Now, I know easier said than done. You're not going to ever stop those guys completely, but to contain them, to keep the damage at a minimum, that didn't happen. If you look at the box score, it was all those guys, literally. Mikko Rantanen had a 4-point game, 3 goals, 1 assist. Nathan MacKinnon had 3 assists. Artturi Lehkonen had a goal and an assist, and Cale Makar had an assist. Only one other player on the entire Avalanche roster had a point. That was Logan O'Connor, who had an assist. It was all the Kings' top line players plus Cale Makar. On the other key to victory I had for the Kings was make Avalanche goaltender Alexander Georgiev uncomfortable. He could have taken a nap in the second period. He could have eaten a sandwich in the second period. The Kings actually did do a pretty good job of that in the first. But after that, it was a really easy night for the Avalanche netminder, who's had an up and down season so far. So what was good for the Kings from a team standpoint? And you might say, well, it wasn't a lot good. Actually, the first period was great. A great start for the Kings. They've had some not so great starts recently. This first period in Columbus was bad. So this was exactly what I thought the Kings needed against a good team on the road. They were flying around, great forecheck going. Clearly, the Kings were the better team in the first period, and that's why they had a 2-1 lead. Now, how that doesn't translate at all going forward, I don't know. Again, I get the Avs are good. They're at home. And again, I get them pushing back after, the Kings were the better team in the first. They suck it up and come out with a strong second period, but the Kings just kind of disappeared after that great start. It had no carryover whatsoever, and it's a real head scratcher. The third of our Kings keys was to stay out of the box, but also obviously have a good penalty kill against the Avalanche power play, which is top 3 in the league coming in. And the Kings penalty kill in this game was outstanding. Not good, not very good, outstanding. The Avalanche, with all those top players that I mentioned who play on their power play unit, had 3 power play chances, and they had 0 shots on goal. 0 shots on goal from a top 3 power play in the league with Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen and Cale Makar. And the Kings, I won't say they made it look easy, but they were fantastic on the PK. And it was as good as it's been all year. So I would say, going into the season, obviously Jim Hiller made some changes. One of them was to make the penalty kill more aggressive. And we saw, what the PK was like against the Oilers. And granted, the Oilers were a phenomenal power play. But one of the things that probably Jim Hiller was asked about was, what are you going to do to make the penalty kill better? And here he said, this is what we're going to do. And if you wanted a snapshot of what exactly he would like to see from the Kings penalty kill, it would be in the penalty kill against Colorado. It was phenomenal, perfect, fantastic. If there's one real positive thing to take away from that game, it was the penalty kill. It was as good as it's been in a long time. So there's that. Again, big picture, if you're looking big picture, the Kings, if they get in the playoffs and they take on a powerful power play unit, if they perform like they did against Colorado, they're going to be okay, because that was as good as you can get. Fantastic job on the PK for the Kings. Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of other things, particularly in the second and third, that went right, but that penalty kill was phenomenal. Up next, which Kings deserve credit and which deserve blame in the loss to Colorado? That's next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you can place your bets. And of course, FanDuel is there for you to bet on the NFL, college football, the NBA, and the NHL. So what's out there for you to get in on some action tonight? How about some Thursday night NFL football and NFC East battle for first place as the Philadelphia Eagles host the Washington Commanders? Philadelphia is favored by 3.5 points. The over-under in the game is 49.5. Join FanDuel, browse the latest betting odds and your favorite sports and teams on the Sportsbook app and get in on the action. You'll get $150 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. And the World Series, Super Bowl, the Olympics, the world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing, teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. Select Quote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy and keep your financial legacy safe for your family's end zone. Select Quote is one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, helping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. Other life insurance brokers offer impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies that may cost you more and cover you less, while Select Quote's licensed agents work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. Go to selectquote.com/lockedonnhl today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. Well, let's get into some Kings individual performances against the Avalanche, and we'll start with Darcy Kuemper, Kings netminder, who was pretty good in this game. Didn't allow any soft goals in this one. But of course, the big story with Darcy is that he left with an injury. Again, Kings insider Zach Dooley, kingsinsider.com, reported after the game that head coach Jim Hiller had no update on Kuemper, who left early in the third period with what appeared to be a lower body injury. I'm no doctor. I will play one on the podcast. To me, looked like it was probably a groin injury. I don't think it was a knee or anything like that. Kuemper did miss time earlier this season and was placed on injured reserve with a lower body injury, missed a handful of games, but wasn't out an extended period of time. I would guess this is something similar. Obviously, the concern is that this could be something that is related to that previous injury and that this is something that could nag him all season long. Do the Kings shut him down for an extended period and try to get him completely healthy for the rest of the season, or do they kind of manage this the rest of the way, get him to where he's good enough to get out there. But then, there may be times where they have to, manage his workload, or it's obviously, look, it's a big concern at this point. While it's good that it's not something that appears to be serious, it's not a knee injury or anything like that could require surgery or something. Again, it does. If this is in fact related to his previous injury, it is a concern that this is something he may have to deal with for the entire season. And he's been very good for the LA Kings this year. And obviously, again, it's a concern. So we don't know any details at this point. Don't know if he'll go back on injured reserve. If you didn't see the game, the TNT broadcasters actually picked up on this, where Kuemper was having a conversation with defenseman Vladislav Gavrikov, and it kind of appeared that Gavrikov was asking him, "Hey, are you okay?" Because maybe he noticed the way he was moving. And Kuemper initially, I guess, said, let me play through it. And then at some point he realized, no, I can't do this. And they stopped play during the play when he alerted the referee that, hey, I'm hurt. And that's when he came off the ice. So concerning, and hopefully Darcy Kuemper again is going to be back sooner rather than later. But again, it is a concern that this could be something that he's dealing with all year long. I did want to point out the top line for the Kings: Adrian Kempe, Anze Kopitar, Trevor Moore. We talked recently about how it's been a revolving door on the wing position. Who's going to play with Kopi? Who's going to play with Juice? Trevor Moore looked great. And that top line was, great for the first period. Obviously not too much the rest of the way like the rest of the team. But I'm anticipating that this group, this trio, will stay together for at least a little while, because they were really good in that opening period. Showed a lot of chemistry, great passing. Obviously, Kempe was the finisher with the 2 goals, giving him 7 on the season, second on the team, tied for second on the team. And they all had a hand in both goals with great passing and good forechecking and setting up Juice for the finish. Anze Kopitar and Trevor Moore each had 2 assists. Kopi's now leading the team with 20 points. Moore extended his career best point streak to 7 in a row. Talked about the Kings' penalty kill and the changes that Jim Hiller made there. The other thing that Jim Hiller did for coming into this season was making the Kings shifting away from that 1-3-1 to a 1-2-2 and having them be more of an aggressive forechecking type of team. The 1-3-1, more defensive and kind of a counter-punching attack, where they make you make mistakes, turn the puck over, and then they attack like that. The Kings hoping this year to be, again, more proactive, more aggressive. And I thought the Kings were that in the first period, particularly the top line. And on those 2 goals, it started with a forecheck and a turnover and then some good passing. So again, we talk about the penalty kill, talking about bigger picture on the season. That PK is exactly what the Kings are looking for. And I think the first period of that game against Colorado is also kind of exactly what the Kings are looking for. So we're seeing glimpses of those changes and what it can look like when it's working right. But of course, as we've mentioned many times, a hockey game is 3 periods, not 1. And, but again, the top line I thought played great. And that was kind of a blueprint for what the Kings need going forward, but not just from the top line, from others as well. Kevin Fiala. Okay. I admit I was kind of half joking when I said we would do a game-by-game update on if we saw good Kevin or bad Kevin. And I've said I like Kevin Fiala. I think he is an asset to have on the team. I think at times he is an elite player, but he has not made it easy to like him recently. He had a bad turnover in this game in the Kings zone, but he did make up for it immediately with a great defensive play to kind of erase his own mistake. But in the second period, when the Kings desperately needed someone to step up and make a play to kind of turn things around, to kind of spark the team, Kevin Fiala had a breakaway and he hit the post. And then he immediately took an elbowing penalty. Now the Kings did kill it off. But if Kevin Fiala scores on that breakaway, it's 3-1 Kings, and the Abs will be saying to themselves, we've been dominating this team in the second period, and not only do we have nothing to show for it, we're trailing. We've allowed a goal. I mean, it was a moment that could have turned the game around. We need Kevin Fiala and players like Kevin Fiala to finish on those types of opportunities. We talked about it in the Calgary game. The Flames had two great scoring opportunities. They scored on both. And the Kings had a couple of great scoring opportunities and they didn't score and they lost the game. When you get these types of opportunities and it's one of your top skilled players, you got to finish on those opportunities. Kevin Fiala, I like him. He's a real good player. There's still a lot of season left, but I don't know what's going on with him right now. He's had a few of these chances. He's had a few breakaways, and he hasn't finished on them. Maybe he's thinking it. Maybe it's in his head at this point, but man, that was a big moment. Could have had a big impact on the game, and Kevin Fiala comes up short again. Jordan Spence. Now, if you've watched this show for any length of time, you know I'm a Jordan Spence fan. And earlier this season, Jim Hiller made him a healthy scratch, and I came to Jordan's defense and said I didn't think that was fair. Well, I think it might be time to sit Jordan Spence for a game or two. Back-to-back games, he's now let an opponent get behind him for a breakaway chance, and both times it's led to goals. Now, granted, it was two very good players, Jonathan Huberdeau of the Flames, Mikko Rantanen of the Avalanche, but you could also argue of all the players you're going to let to get behind you, don't let it be the elite players for the other team. I still think Jordan Spence can be a good player for the Kings, but he might need to sit a game or two, just hit the reset button, maybe get Kyle Burrows in the lineup for a couple of games. Spence was a -3 in the game against Colorado. And Quentin Byfield, remember when I talked about the ketchup bottle and how a couple of nice games in a row for Trevor Moore and Quentin Byfield might be just the thing to get him going? Well, the ketchup's flowing for Trevor Moore, but it's not for Q. And unfortunately, he at least would bring the energy and be flying around the ice, but I didn't really notice him much in this Colorado game. And I kind of feel like we're seeing Quentin Byfield from 2 years ago, had that big step forward last season. And I think we all were excited, and rightfully so, to see him take another step forward this season. So far, it hasn't happened, and it just feels like he needs a big game soon to try and turn things around. So, where do the Kings go from here? Well, back home. That's next. You're on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Just go to the PrizePicks app, make your picks right now, and you could be a winner. And you can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in most states, including California. Download the PrizePick app today and use the code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That is the code LOCKEDONNHL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive your $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Well, after the Kings lose, we don't have 3 stars of the game, but we do have our royal performer. We usually like to pick at least one player out that's had a positive impact. And I think for the Colorado game, obviously it's Adrian Kempe with his 2 goals. Juice would be our royal performer of the game. So the LA Kings are now 9-6-3 on the season for 21 points in 18 games. They are no longer atop the standings in the Pacific Division. As expected, the Vegas Golden Knights beat the Anaheim Ducks last night to move into first place in the Pacific. Kings are now 1 point back of the Golden Knights and 2 points up on both the Vancouver Canucks and Calgary Flames for the second spot in the Pacific Division. Up next, the Kings host the Detroit Red Wings on Saturday in what frankly is a game the Kings should and need to win. LA will play 7 of their next 9 games on home ice, and the 2 road games are local, San Jose and Anaheim. So a long stretch, being at home, hopefully a good opportunity for the Kings to get more on track, be more consistent on home ice, and keep them in a top 3 position in the Pacific Division as we close out November and head into December. As for the immediate future in net, obviously look for David Riddick to get the start against Detroit. And I would expect he and Phoenix Copley will get the call up, and they will share the duties in net for the foreseeable future. Obviously, we'll update Darcy Kuemper on our next show as soon as we get some kind of an update. Also did want to mention there was one other injury for the LA Kings. Defenseman Caleb Jones also got hurt in the game against Colorado. Upper body injury, left the game. I believe it was in the second period and did not return. So another King injured as well. Did want to close out with a quick rain report. The Ontario Reign were in action last night as they picked up a home victory over the Tucson Roadrunners by a score of 4-1. Francesco Pinelli opened up the scoring with his second goal of the season. It was tied 1-1 in the second when Glenn Gaudin scored his third of the year to make it 2-1. Riley Walsh's second goal of the season on the power play in the third period made it 3-1, and then Glenn Gaudin scored his second of the game into the empty net to finish off the scoring. Reign 4, Roadrunners 1. Eric Portillo stopped 23 of 24 shots in the victory. The Kings AHL affiliate is now 5-6 on the season. Coming up for you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day on Friday, of course, it is our Friday Kings fan feedback show. Anything on your mind involving the LA Kings that you want to talk about, questions, comments, it's your chance to sound off with our weekly Friday fan feedback show. The email address, if you'd like to send an email for that, is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. As always, you can leave your comments if you're watching on YouTube in the comment section. We appreciate that. And we would love you to stay interactive with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you, as always, for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you on Friday. And as always, go Kings, go.